The Revenant from Halo Reach is a bit of an overlooked vehicle, with it only ever featuring in the one game. And the MEGA Bloks version of that vehicle was also overlooked, with it only ever really having one design. So, a few years ago, I aimed to try and do this vehicle justice. So once again, I just want to quickly go over and have a look at an old Preforged MOC before I plan to take it apart and further update it into a proper USS MOC. Medium-sized Covenant vehicles have always had a hard time standing out in the Halo franchise. Unlike the Ghost, the Banshee or the Wraith, none of the Warthog equivalents on the Covenant side ever seemed to really stick. First we got the Spectre in Halo 2, which is essentially a Covenant Warthog that just has one extra passenger seat. And then in Halo 3 we got the Brute Prowler, which has essentially the same function as a Spectre but just a remixed design. And then finally in Halo Reach we got the Revenant, which has a more unique in-game function, with it having the maneuverability of the Ghost but with the weapon type of the Wraith. And in the game it does fit this role pretty well. So at this point, this model is nearly 4 years old, but I think that my past self did a pretty good job with it. As far as features on the build goes, there's not a massive amount, but there's enough to tick all the essential boxes. It comes with 2 seats that can each hold a figure, and these feature some rudimentary hand controls that the figures can hold onto. The rear turret can fold up and down, although the folding mechanism is somewhat limited. Finally, there's these front side pods that droop, just like they do in game if you catch some air, or if you can lift up the vehicle in forge mode. When looking at the overall build, I think shape-wise, this MOC came out head and shoulders ahead of the only Mega set that they ever did. I felt like the official set never got the front profile to ever properly resemble the in-game model, and the front side swiveling pieces ended up being a bit overbuilt. This just threw the proportions off so much that the set never really resembled the in-game model too much. So when it came to doing this build, I put a special emphasis on getting the proportions of that front profile just right. For the midsection of the model, I thought that these bucket seats were the perfect piece to design the midsection around, as they closely resemble the seats on the in-game model. In retrospect though, I think that they ended up being a little bit oversized and ended up stretching the model out ever so slightly. They do still fit pretty well though. The rear shaping also turned out pretty nicely. I used 2 of these special pieces and they just clip into place at the sides. It's a decent solution to try and emulate that rear taper on the model, but these specific pieces end up leaving a little bit of a gap though. These curved pieces nicely trim the edge of the passenger area, but I could only end up securing them by a single stud, so that does leave them being very fragile and easily pushed out of place. And this is unfortunately also how the side pods turned out. They are only very loosely connected via 2 studs each, so them being knocked off is not an uncommon occurrence if you're moving the model around. The last fragile area of the model would have to be the underside. When building this, I used this concept image as a reference and felt that I really managed to encapsulate the detail of the underside quite well. The way this had to be constructed does leave multiple weak points, which all too easily fall apart when picking up or moving the model from the underside. The building methods that I used to add these slim slopes ends up adding a little bit too much height to the side profile and ends up making the model just a little bit too tall. As a result, I'm not really sure if this bit of detail is really going to stay in this form when I get around to making the USS version of the Revenant. Overall, I'd say that this is a vast improvement on the only model that MEGA has ever made of the Revenant, but there are still multiple areas of improvement. Generally making the model sturdier and attempting to build it with a few of the newer methods that I've built up over the past few years will hopefully go a ways to even further improving on this build for the USS model. I found the Revenant to be a fairly unique challenge as far as MOCs go, as there's such a limited part variety in this colour. I'm a really big fan of the fact that MEGA came out with this very unique maroon red colour. as it really brings models made with this to life when you compare it with their in-game counterparts. The downside, however, is that this colour has only been featured in a handful of sets, and to my knowledge I think the only 2 sets that have a significant amount of this colour are the Revenant and the Spectre. Trying to emulate all of the in-game features of the model with such limited part selection is a huge challenge, and honestly it's going to be a huge challenge when I do the USS version of this build. What do you think of this build? Do you think I did the in-game model justice, or do you think that I've got a ways to go to further improve it? This is the second video in my Preforged series where I cover an older Covenant MOC that I have yet to update. So if you liked this video, then maybe you should check out the first part in this series. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. Anyway, I'm Reforger, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.